There, we are live. Finally, welcome, Cyrus. And I heard you had some great problems with your hotel there.
I did. I did.
Anyway,
No,
it's what is it, 9:30 or 9:25 p.m. over there?
it is exactly.
Exactly.
So,
All right. Well, thank
yeah,
you very much for staying up late to have a chat with us. We've got a few people in the chat room already having a great discussion about whether New Zealand or Australia has the best fish, or whether New
nice.
Zealand or China has the best lamb. I'm in favor of China. But anyway, let's get straight into it. Let's go on with the first question, since everybody's waiting here now already.
Yeah.
The first question I had for you was relating to China's trade, or actually to China's collapse. I've got the questions written down on my phone here. So the collapsing economy, let's look at that first of all. China's foreign trade grew by 1.3% in the first quarter of this year, and that's 10 trillion yuan. Which is 150 billion US dollars or more. And for 8 consecutive quarters, it has gone up. How is this ever identified as a collapsing economy? What's going on?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jerry. I think what we've seen with China is this is a systematic move over the past really 10 years that China has been moving a lot of its trade and a lot of its economy overseas. And I think this is something that a lot of people don't realize. This trade war and really the tariff war by Trump is very interesting because, here in the United States, we have a lot of false narratives. For example, many Americans think that, China is in a position of weakness because, the common thing that you'll hear here is, the United States doesn't need China. We can simply buy from anywhere else in the world, but China needs the United States because it needs to export those products to the United States market. What's very interesting, though, is that China is not really that reliant on its exports. Not, like, for example, Canada is actually more reliant on exports than China when you actually look at the percentages and how those economies are structured. But, China is also, I think, they really embrace that philosophy of not keeping all of your eggs in one basket. We know that diversification is a very important thing in investing, and they don't want to be too reliant on the United States. I mean, obviously, it's no secret between you and I. We've been speaking out on China for many years, and the United States and China relationship is one that has not improved in the last 5 years. Ironically, I started this YouTube channel 5 years ago. Wanting to improve U.S.-China relations. And unfortunately, it hasn't really improved. It's actually gotten worse. And it's certainly at a very, very low point right now as we're doing this live stream. So, Jerry, I think what we're seeing here is that we're seeing a lot of trade. I mean, we know that, the Asian countries, for example, have increased tremendously. I mean, we look at Xi Jinping right now. He's in Malaysia. He's signing a big amount of deals, 45 new trade agreements in Vietnam. We know the entire ASEAN bloc actually has more trade value than the United States itself. And you're going to see more countries as well shift. I mean, we know the entire continent of Africa is shifting much closer to China. Actually, China's trade with Africa is roughly 4 to 5 times that already of the United States. And Jerry, that's what we've seen is a tremendous amount of growth, specifically in the past 20 years. Actually, at the turn of the millennial, the United States had significantly more trade than China in Africa. And now we've seen that completely reversed in just 2 decades to the tune of, now China being 4 to 5 times more than the United States. So, there's a lot of interesting data points when you start looking at the actual data and seeing what China is doing around the world. No secret here, over 140 countries around the world, rely on China as their top trading partner. So, China has options. And I think that's something that's really important for people to understand in this trade war.
Yeah, I saw a senator, I think he's Bill O'Reilly is his name, a senator who basically said, we are the biggest consumers in the world and China needs our market. So it's going to have to come to the table and it's going to have to negotiate with us. I honestly don't think these people are being very well informed. Where are they getting their media? Is it from media or where are they getting their information? Surely there are people informing the government who understand that China isn't what they think it is.
To be honest, Jerry, I mean, I'm going to come out very hard on this live stream, just being very, very blunt.
Okay.
We don't have good advisors in the White House right now. We don't have people that have a clue The United States is, we live in a media bubble. We live in a total bubble here in the United States. I'll give you a great example. When Vice President J.D. Vance flew to Greenland, they actually had to change the itinerary because, in this propaganda wheelhouse that we live in the United States, it was so funny because, the message to us is that, we had a senator go on CNBC, basically on the news network, and he said, the Greenlanders, they love the United States. They're so on board with this plan. Overwhelming majority of Greenlanders are excited about being part of America. And, so to the average American, they're just watching CNBC and they're thinking, oh, okay, cool. I didn't know that. Okay, great. But I'm glad that, of course, like we're the best. Yeah, great. America's number one. So, of course, why wouldn't they be interested to be part of us? But the reality is that was just a blatant lie from the senator that got on the news network. So when J.D. Vance, in his original itinerary, he actually wanted to include local Greenlanders, as part of his show, like, like, hey, come and do an interview with us. And basically they couldn't find one. They couldn't find a single person that wanted to be part of that. So they had to change that. And if you notice where he went, the only place that he visited in Greenland was the U.S. military base, because that was essentially the only place that he would be welcomed, which makes sense because that's actually, considered American territory. It's an American military base. Right. So of course he would be well received there as the Vice President of the United States. But, there's just this false idea of, what's going on in the world right now. When we look at, again, the data points, the vast majority of Greenlanders, they voted no in joining the United States. Every single Greenland politician voted no. So it's not like it's, a small data point that they've missed. They're on the complete opposite side of the spectrum. They're telling the American public, Greenlanders love us. They all want to be part of us. Meanwhile, it's literally the exact 180 degrees opposite. It's nothing like that. So I think what you see here is, and I really want to go to, something that I've heard a lot the last week. Who's going to be the first to blink? Is it going to be Xi Jinping in China, or is it going to be Donald Trump in the United States? And Jerry, we've already seen that. We've already seen Donald Trump blink, because he's blinked several times, right? Because what happened is that within 48 hours, you had basically his advisors saying, look, if we don't, put a pause, let's put a 90-day pause on these tariffs, the stock market is about to absolutely crater. Okay. And we're on the verge of almost of a financial crisis. And so they had to convince him to put a pause on the tariffs. But then specifically with the Chinese tariffs, they started exempting mobile phones, computer monitors, solar panels. And again, Jerry, the simple example that we can talk about is just simply the iPhone, right? Yeah. These iPhones are some of the most advanced machines in the world. This is essentially a computer in the palm of your hand. And there's only one country in the world that can make them at a quantity and a quality that is deserving of an Apple logo. And that's China. We know that. And I'm almost certain, I don't know this for a fact, I'm speculating here, but I would almost guarantee you that you had Tim Cook, calling the White House and saying, look.
Trump has said I've spoken to Tim
there you go.
But he also said he's spoken to Xi Jinping, which apparently he has not.
There's no way. Yeah.
But he actually has said that I spoke to Tim Cook, and we're going to exempt his products, and that's great. Most of the products that are coming in or going into the US from China in terms of handheld phones are not Chinese products. They're Samsungs and they're iPhones.
Right.
Not everybody over there is going to buy an iPhone or a Xiaomi or a Nokia. Well, not a Nokia anymore, but they're not going to buy a Chinese phone. They're buying either a Korean or an American, but they are both made here in China.
Yeah,
just in case anyone doesn't know who I am because we've got a lot of people from your side of the story, your show. I actually live in Guangdong, so we're going to talk about Guangdong a little bit. Somebody asked me if you're in China for the Canton Fair, and the answer to that I know is you're not. But are you planning on coming over for it?
I'm not planning on coming to the Canton Fair specifically. I am going to be coming to Guangzhou in about 2 months' time. So I'm going to be there in middle of June, and my wife is originally from Guangzhou. We actually come back to the summertime. We're limited kind of on our children's school schedule. So we do take our summer holidays. We do go back to China, it's a tough time to go because it is so hot. But it's not too bad. I mean, we enjoy the weather. I mean, we enjoy being in China, and quite honestly, Jerry, I'm actually excited. I'm actually counting down the days to go back to China because I'm excited to kind of get away from all of this media, all of this news here in the United States, and and quite simply just have a little bit more of a simple life, in China, and not and just have a little bit more normalcy. We have a lot of uneducated people in the United States it's actually very scary when you think about the fact that these people have the right to vote. And I mean that because I've been talking with so many of my local Americans, and I'm talking educated people, Jerry. I'm not talking, high school level, people that don't understand the world. I'm talking doctors and lawyers, people that have, well-established, very affluent business professionals, in my local community. And quite frankly, they don't know what a tariff means. They have no idea what a tariff means. They don't know how that works. And it's kind of shocking when it's like, wow, like this is pretty basic stuff, guys. Like you guys should be understanding how
I've
our
seen
world
quite a
works
lot of
little bit.
stuff on social media. It's quite viral actually on Chinese social media. What's going on in America? People are being interviewed in the streets and saying, well, China are going to pay the tariffs.
Yes.
And then someone's pointing out, well, actually, that's not how it works. You pay the tariff. No, I'm not paying the tariff. China are paying the tariff. And it is amazing that even Trump, the president of the United States, is telling people China is paying for this. He claimed the other day that the U.S. government are collecting $2 billion a day. The U.S. government border control said, actually, it's not that much. It's actually 500 million, which means that the cost of the trade loss has been far outweighed by the gains that America, even if it is 2 billion a day, which it's not, but even if it were 2 billion a day, it would be just awful, wouldn't it?
Jerry, we're at a very pivotal time in the United States right now, and this is something that people, we're still very early in this, but the chickens are going to come home to roost very soon, as we say. The bad news is coming, and I guarantee you, Donald Trump will have to pivot from this strategy very quickly, because I think there's going to be tens of thousands, and then it's going to quickly turn into millions of American businesses that are going to be hurt. I've got some interesting points that I want to make about this.
Sure.
Number one, I was at a restaurant tonight. I'm actually in the city of San Diego at the moment. So I'm here traveling. I travel quite a lot for work, and I'm always out and about. But I was at a dinner with a client tonight, and that's why I was a little late tonight as well. But the restaurant said, there is now going to be a 5% charge, basically to make up for the rising cost of everything. So now that's now included in your bill. Is just an extra 5%.
That's already happened.
That's already happening. And earlier this week, my wife, she got emails from her nail salon, from the hairdresser, from the gym that we are members at, basically saying, starting May 1st, everything's going to be increasing in price due to all of the big price increases that we're seeing. So again, when you're looking at the who is this trade war affecting the most, it's going to be the most common Americans, right? Because now, your haircuts, getting your nails done, going to the gym, going to a restaurant, all of these now have increased costs, because everyone has to offset these costs. But the big problem here, Jerry, is that people don't realize how many small businesses are depending on their manufacturing in China or getting products from China. I mean, here's a statistic that is really mind-blowing. 71% of products sold on Amazon come from China. Okay. 71%. So you look at all of the American businesses that are resellers, or Amazon, doing drop shipping, or, just good old American entrepreneurs that are hustling, they find a great product, they're getting it made in China, they're selling it. And this is what people don't understand. Again, the argument for the Trump loyalist is like, well, you know what? This tariff war is good because it forces you to immediately abandon China, and now you manufacture everything in the United States. Well, the problem with this, Jerry, is that if you have a business, okay, let's just say that you have a local business that is selling, shirts. Okay, let's say you're a clothing brand, and there's many of these clothing brands that are American builds. They have, dozens, if not hundreds of employees. Now, the problem is that you have X amount of inventory left. Okay, so
Yeah.
your shelves are filled with inventory, but the problem is you can't order new inventory because guess what? It's a 245% tariff. Well, there's not a product out there that that any company is going to be able to, be able to salvage that, basically be able to justify that tariff increase. So we're already seeing, business owners speak out and say, look, we have this product line. It's made in China. We made over $1 million a year on it. It's a very successful product. But now with a 245% tariff, we cannot import that product anymore. Therefore, we have to discontinue this product. Well, okay, well, now that's $1 million in revenue, that's basically an opportunity cost that isn't coming in. Now, look at it from another perspective. Let's imagine that you're a big retailer. Let's imagine you're like Walmart or Target. Let's say, for example, you're importing sweaters like this. This is just a generic, simple gray sweatshirt, something very similar that you would find in a Target or Walmart. Let's say this is $40 US. Okay, now a big corporation like this, it wouldn't be unreasonable for them to, let's say, have a container ship filled with $1 million worth of this in inventory. So let's imagine you have $1 million of sweaters in inventory that's on a boat from China, and now it's docked in Los Angeles. No, now Target has an option. What do? Do we accept the $1 million, in sweatshirts? Because if we do, we now have to write a check to the U.S. government for $2.45 million, which is the tax. So now this, $1 million in inventory is now going to be $3.45 million. So, now this sweatshirt that used to cost $40, well, it's going to cost probably $120 now. And at $120, no one's going to be buying this because it's just a generic gray sweatshirt. It's not, it's not some famous brand. It's just a Walmart sweatshirt. So this is the problem. So what do you do if you're Walmart? Well, if you're Walmart, you're just going to say, you know what? We'll just decline the $1 million. Like you'd rather just say, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and forego the $1 million in inventory because I can't justify that price. Do I take a $3.4 million loss or do I take $1 million loss? Obviously, you take the $1 million. Now, Walmart, Target, they can take that hit. They could take $1 million hit. Obviously, they're billion-dollar corporations. But again, what about these small American businesses that can't afford that? So you're gonna see a situation that if Trump does not pivot from this within the next really month or even shorter, couple of weeks to maybe a month maximum, you're going to start to see shelves being empty because they simply can't get inventory in. You're going to see a lot of businesses they're going to go bankrupt because they don't have any cash flow. They cannot buy a new inventory. They don't have inventory to sell. They have tons of employees. You're going to see layoffs. It's just a nightmare across the board. And the simple thing, Jerry, is, as you know, people that make this comment like, oh, just build your stuff in America, just get this sweatshirt made in America. You don't understand how difficult that is to do. Even if you want to, you've got to find a factory, you've got to do sample tests, you've got to get your logo done. I mean, this isn't something that you do in a day. I mean, this takes, in order to get a good quality product that you're going to put your name and your logo behind and then mass produce it, I mean, you're talking months of back and forth with the factory, sample testing, all this kind of stuff. So again, if you're a small business, you're not going to be able to do that. You don't have that time frame. So again, this is really where we're at in America right now. And again, I think this is why China has a lot more cards than the United States media, and certainly the United States president wants you to know and understand.
Yeah, and some of the politicians too. I've been watching quite a lot of social media. I don't watch much on TikTok, and I don't actually watch much on YouTube. But I'm seeing this. This is getting pushed into me all the time. People saying, I make this in China, and it costs me $1. And then I've asked someone if they can make it for me in America. First of all, getting a reply.
Yes.
These companies are not even bothering to reply. Then they're saying, well, unless you give us an order for 50,000 of them, we're not even going to bother giving you a price for it. Then when they do finally get to that point, they say, yeah, okay, well, I'll buy 50,000 of them. What's the price? And the price is coming back at $8.50. No,
Right.
I'm paying $1 for it in America, in China, and I'm shipping it across here, and I'm paying 245% tariffs on it, and it's still cheaper. So
Yeah.
it is onshoring going to work? I mean, is it possible that after this kind of hiccup that they're going through now, is it possible that this could repair itself to a point where people in America are going to be able to make it, or is that just an outrageous fantasy?
Well, you know what's so funny about this, Jerry, and I do want to say we've passed over 1,100 people in our live stream so far. So this
Yeah,
is a
13.
great,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So great, great turnout so far. Is it 13 now? I can't even.
1,300. Yeah.
Oh yeah, perfect. So can't even keep track, but that's great. I mean, thank you guys for all being here tonight, and and tuning in to Jerry and I have this nice chat. So, Jerry, I love that question. I saw this really funny skit that actually was from 2017. So there's a famous, Black American comedian named Dave Chappelle, very, very famous in the United States.
I know
And,
him.
and so Dave Chappelle, he made a skit in 2017. And it's actually really funny. I'd play it if I had it available, right in front of me. But he basically said, why is it that Donald Trump's ideas sound like high people ideas? And then the crowd starts laughing, and he goes, seriously. He goes, you want to take jobs from China and bring them back to America? For what? He's like, for what? He's like, man, I want to wear Nikes. I don't want to make them. He's like,
Yes.
right. And so, he goes on and he's like, yeah, you want to come and build Apple factories here? Why, man? I don't want to make iPhones. I want to buy iPhones, right? I want to use them. And I think that's such an interesting thing. I mean, Jerry, if you know anything about the United States right now, one of the things that you often hear with a lot of small business, how difficult it is to find people that want to work. I mean, really, and I'm talking established jobs, and that this is the issue that we face. Right now, in the state of California, minimum wage is $20. So I mean, if you're working at McDonald's, I mean, you're making $20 an hour. So there's not a big incentive for you to, these people don't want to work in a factory. I mean, this is the simple reality. But here's another kind of catch-22 on this. Even young Chinese people don't really want to work in factories anymore.
No,
and
they don't.
Right? And I think what you're seeing here, Jerry, that's very interesting is you're actually seeing a lot of Chinese businessmen also being very savvy, and they're also taking factories outside of China. They're also relocating to Vietnam and to India and to other countries, for this very kind of a lower end manufacturing. Obviously, the higher end manufacturing, which is, again, a very strategic move by Xi Jinping. This was laid out in 2015 with the Made in China 2025 initiative that basically was saying, look, we're going to shift, to a more strategic, to a more, higher end manufacturing. And that's what China has done. And again, this is why, again, I have a good friend of mine. He owns a golf club company. So he's actually in Vancouver, Canada. So luckily for him, he's, doesn't have to worry about these tariffs because he's obviously, importing from China and then importing into Canada, assembling in Canada and shipping. But now now his business is affected because he's now shipping. Because why? Because Donald Trump has tariffed our closest ally and our neighbor, Canada, which is just absolutely preposterous to me. I don't know why you would go after Canada. Trump has said that it's a fentanyl problem, but if you actually look at the data again, there's almost little to no fentanyl coming over the border from Canada's side. So that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, or getting caught. So I mean, again, this is just. I feel that Donald Trump really just makes up a lot of things as he goes. I don't think that I don't think he reads his president briefs. I don't think he has a very good understanding of things around him. I think he really just makes things up off the go. I heard this report that was quite interesting. There was a former chief of staff. So he served under Donald Trump during his first administration. And, the topic of, the border crisis with Mexico had come up. And he said, we're sitting there in the meeting and Donald Trump says, well, what if we build like a huge moat? Like imagine we just have a huge moat all across the entire border of Mexico and the United States. And then we just take this moat and we just fill it with a bunch of reptilia. Like, let's just get a lot of alligators. Let's get a lot of snakes, and let's just make this. Let's just make this amazing. Like, we'll make it amazing. You could totally see Trump saying this, right? It's like,
Yes.
we're going to make an amazing moat. It's going to be like the best moat ever, right? We're going to have alligators in the moat. We're going to have snakes in the moat. That way that nobody wants to cross the moat, because that's going to be the best way. And you're thinking, and he's like, we're all in the room looking at each other like, is he serious? Like, does he know how long the border between the United States and Mexico is? Like, this is totally inconceivable. Like, it wouldn't make any sense at all. So
maybe they could make it into an alternative Panama Canal.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so over the top, and I'm just like, wow, this is just So I mean, to be honest though, Jerry, it's very sad that the United States is in this position. There's we look at actually what, Jerry, again, I love to look at the data. Let's go back to Trump 1.0. When he said, we're going to target specifically the steel industry, and we're going to bring back all of these steel jobs. There was a very, very minimal amount of jobs that were actually gained. I mean, I'm talking, all of these tariffs, all of this thing, and it's like 2,000 jobs are added. It was a very minimum number of actual jobs that were gained in that industry, because, the simple thing is, Jerry, as this is not the 1940s and 50s when, the city of Pittsburgh, which was the steel capital of the United States, that's when it was that's when it was amazing, right? That's when America was building all these things. And, we have this interesting thing where, it's like, well, we should go back in time, we should go back and, make everything in America again. Let's just not be self-reliant. Let's not be dependent on anybody else in the world. Let's only be dependent on the United States. And it's like, what kind of backwards thinking is that? Like, this is literally going back hundreds of years to when trading was so difficult, where, it's like, if I'm trading with Australia, 100 years ago, well, how do I get it there?
6 months to get there.
Yeah, I got to put it on a boat and ship it for 6 months. You want to get back to that time? Like, no, like, globalization has been an amazing thing, because, whatever, if I have an American product and Australians want to buy it, I can ship it there on a cargo ship. You guys can buy it. We can buy Australian. I think, like isn't the UGG boots, right? Aren't those from Australia? I mean,
they are, but they're made in China.
Yeah, there you go, right? So I mean, it's the same, great. I mean, and I mean, I think what's amazing, Jerry, this is a fun live stream because we get to talk about all of these things that are going on. But you've seen the reels that have been exposing the luxury goods market, right?
Yes.
You're right. I mean, this is fascinating. People buying $500 Gucci sandals, and it's like, yeah, bro, we make that in our factory for like $5. Like, literally, it's rubber, and like all of the Gucci sandals are here, and people are like, are you kidding me? Like, this, I'm paying $500 for, like, it's a 99% markup. It's like, yeah, fair enough. It's exactly what it is.
Yeah, there was a guy on Twitter the other day screaming about this because he'd paid $450 for a pair of 70-cent slippers. They cost 70 cents to make. Now, of course, the factory doesn't ship them at 70 cents, but the factory's probably shipping them at $2, maybe $3, and they're arriving in America with a markup of $450, which is amazing. It's a really, and I put a comment on Twitter that I thought there's two hilarious parts to that. One is that that people are finding this out. That's funny to me. But the second one is there are people who are paying $450 for slippers. These are shower slippers, and do they really cost us? I mean, is that true? In America, you can buy these things for that price?
I mean, for sure. I mean, if you're going to go to the, your Gucci's, your Pradas, your Hermes, I mean, yeah, I mean, a pair of sandals would cost you $500, $600, $700 easily. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I live in a different world here. Mine costs 20 RMB.
Oh, I know. I mean, especially for shower slippers, for sure. We did get a super chat in here from was it some Frobert. I mean, some good super chats. So I always try to recognize.
Yeah, bring them up. Yeah, I've been saying thank you as they've been coming in, but bring them up. It was one of them. The last one came in with a good point as well.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, my math was wrong on the fly. Thank you, J Japan. It is 2000. You're right. You are correct. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Let's just bring Fluff up.
Fluffing Fluff. What a name.
Yeah, this is a
Love it.
lovely name, isn't it? Chinese people, this is a really valid point, actually. Chinese people can survive without the US, and we can't say the same about the US. Most Chinese people, not can't, they do save. I recently had a situation where I put a lot of money into my Chinese bank account. I cashed in what we call in Australia superannuation. You know, I'm 66 years old. I'm of the age where I can do this, and I just cashed it in and asked them to transfer it to my Chinese bank account. Now,
Yeah.
thank God I did, because I would have literally just in the last month lost somewhere in the region of 200,000 Australian dollars, which is
Wow,
now sitting in my bank account in China.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know, I'm putting in well in excess of $1 million RMB into my bank account. I mean, this is
Right.
the money that's going to last me the rest of my life. I'm not rich, but $1 million RMB. I said to my wife, you know, the bank has to treat us as VIPs now. And she
Right.
looked at me as if I was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a bit more than $1 million, but it was less than 2 billion. She looked at me like I'm crazy. You think that's a VIP in China? I said, I'm a millionaire. No, I'm not. Yeah, I've got 150,000, 200,000 US dollars in the bank. But I mean, I have other sources of income from British pensions as well. But I
Yeah.
got that, put it into the bank. So yeah, we do have incredible amounts of savings here in China. And that's something that is really important for people who don't realize this to remember.
Yeah.
Most Americans with one job. There's
Yeah.
too much month at the end of the money.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jerry, there's a couple really good points here as well, because, you know, we talk about like this, you know, who has the strategic advantage in this trade war, right? And the message that you hear from the United States, and, you know, again, I mean, you always have to just take things with a grain of salt in America, because we have this, we're the only country in the world where we have this exceptionalism. You know, we
Yeah.
always think that we're just better than everybody. America first, America's the best. Everything we do is just amazing. You know, this is kind of the culture here, and this is exactly why I said I'm looking forward to kind of getting out of this bubble, you know, and actually getting back to China and just kind of getting on the ground again. We're going to be making a lot of videos this summer on the ground in China. Super excited for that. But what's interesting here, Jerry, is I heard somebody said, you know, in this trade war, I'm going to bet on China to win, and here's why. It's a very simple reason why: because it's a lot easier for China to create domestic demand for their goods, as opposed to the United States trying to reshore and rebuild everything from scratch. And I thought that was a really brilliant insight, because, you know, and again, I mean, you know this firsthand, being there in Zhongshan, is the simple fact that, you know, right now, I would imagine that the vast majority of Chinese are becoming a lot more patriotic as far as supporting their brands. You know, I don't think that people right now are rushing out to be buying, you know, these American products and saying like, you know, let's buy the Nikes and the Apples and the Starbucks. You know, I mean, it's like, no, I'm going to be supporting more of my Chinese companies now, because it is you know, we're in the middle of this trade war. And I think that, again, you know, it's very, very easy for these, you know, for China to create a domestic consumption, as opposed to America trying to relocate factories from China and do that. The other simple fact is, I mean, you know, it's taken China 50 years to get to this point of being the manufacturing, you know, king of the world, and really being able to, you know, bring it to a whole nother level. And I think that's, you know, I always like to bring up this point. You know, one of the most successful videos that I've done on my YouTube channel was I actually went to visit a Chinese factory. It was in Wuxi, and it was a textile factory, and it was a Norwegian man that co-owned the factory with his Chinese business partner. They manufacture for a lot of Western brands, mainly more European brands, I would say, since the co-owner is Norwegian. You know, he has a lot of more connections in Europe. But when I went there, and Jerry, was amazing, because it was an incredible factory to see how, you know, obviously I wear a lot of clothes, but you know, I never knew how even a simple T-shirt, you know, takes like 7 different machines to make a T-shirt. I'm like, wow, that's a lot more than I would have thought. And it's amazing just the whole steps of going through that. But what I learned, Jerry, and this is what people in America really need to understand, is the entire supply chain. Everything was located within 20 miles of that factory. So, for example, if you needed the threading, the cotton, the colors to dye the material, to actually color that, the stitching, you know, and then all of the machines, actually the factories that produce the textile machines are also located there.
Yeah.
So he's like, yeah, anytime that like one of my machines goes down, I can have a technician here within 15 minutes because the factory that makes these machines is also located here. So they've really centralized everything. And that's where you'll see most of the textiles in China, any kind of clothing company or brand or factory, they're all based in that one region. And so it's a huge concentration because, they all know each other, right? It's like, oh, if you need zippers, yeah, I know the zipper guy. He's just down the street. Oh, I know the button guy. He's on the other side of the street. And I know the thread guy. I know the cotton guy. I know this guy. And so you have this whole ecosystem that is so built out and incredible. And then, of course, loading it up on high-speed trains to get it here, get it to ports, get it, you just can't compete with that. And this is what we've seen, for example, when you say like, well, India is the next China, everyone's going to manufacture in India. I mean, India is so far behind because it's mainly the infrastructure. They don't have that, right? They don't even have reliable electricity in a lot of parts of the country. So you build a factory
China
there.
25 years ago.
Yeah.
If you think about that, I mean, I came to China in 2004, and there was quite a lot of brownouts, a couple of blackouts, but quite often would be living here with, half the stuff would just go down. The lights still work, but nothing else would. It required more power. I'm not sure why that was, how they fixed that, but I haven't seen. I mean, the last time there was a power failure where I live, it was announced to me. I get a message on the phone saying your power is going to go out from this time to this time. Please make necessary arrangements. Right. And we did, and it went out when they said it would, and it came back earlier than they said it would. So they obviously fixed what they needed to fix. But they're letting us know your water will go out. We're going to be working on this pump or this pipe. Your water will go out for this period of time, and they let us know. So we make preparations for it. In the old days, it used to it was gone, and now it's so much better here. So they've got it right. India could do it.
Oh yeah, I mean, it just needs time. I mean, India's just 20 years behind. So, I mean, India is going to be a great, it's, definitely bullish for the long term, just not the near term. 5 to 10 years is not going to make a big difference for India.
No. Somebody asked just before you came in, so this is going back when we're having our chat before the show started. Somebody asked, can America recover? Let's say that something happens, Trump has a brainstorm and he says, oh, look, I've made a mistake here. Can America recover? What's going to happen?
Jerry, I think this is a great question because, one of the things that, we're going to look at this. Let's look at the many things, right? The stock market has gone down tremendously. Okay, then Trump pauses it for 90 days. And then all of a sudden we have a huge stock market increase. But, we're seeing, so many different areas, the relationships with our closest allies, right? I mean, Donald Trump has, turned his back against Canada. He's turned his back against the European Union. Unfortunately, Donald Trump campaigned on America first, but that has now turned into America alone. That we've isolated ourselves on the international stage. Now, can it recover? I think, it's definitely possible. But the problem is that one of the things that is very difficult to recover is trust. And that's the one thing that Donald Trump has burned the most. And I think that's very sad for the United States. I'm a U.S. citizen, and there is a graph that was very revealing to me when, it showed basically tourism from Europe to the United States is down across the board. I'm talking every single country in the EU is down anywhere from 30 to 40%. And I shared that graph with my friend Tommy, who is the Norwegian business owner that co-owns the factory in Wuxi. And, and he said, Cyrus, what's interesting? I can actually say that this is true because I'm back here in Oslo for the summer. I was chatting with all of my friends, and obviously Europeans, they love their summer holiday, and they were talking about what is their plans. And he said, all of my friends were on the same page. He said, well, we're not going to the United States anytime in the next 4 years. So we can certainly take that off the table. But, where else are we going to go for holiday? And so I thought that's a very interesting, comment to make. And it's not like that's just a one-off comment, as we see with the data, again, across the board, all European countries, anywhere from a 30 to 40% decline, huge decline. And that really shows you that people around the world are not trusting the United States anymore. And I think that's going to be very hard to build back.
There's a huge problem involved with that as well, because there's a huge problem involved in this because of the money that's involved in tourism. Because these
Yeah.
tourists are export dollars, they're bringing dollars in. They do get counted, and that's huge. And the other one is the education. What
Yes.
what Trump has done with China, it just baffles me completely. He's basically made it impossible now for Chinese people. He's made it so that Chinese people literally do not want to go to America anymore. Full stop. They don't want to go. They know
Right.
that they're going to get stopped at the border. They're going to have their devices seized. They're going to have quite a lot of them are being turned around. I mean, it's not a significant number, but it's significant enough to make the news here. They're being turned around
They
because
are.
when they're doing you probably know this. A lot of your viewers, our viewers may not know this. Every single person who goes to university inside of China in their first year spends 2 weeks in a military uniform doing group exercises, team building, that kind of thing. And the military provides this service. If they have a photograph of themselves wearing this military uniform on their phone, they're turned around and sent home.
Right.
This is all the master's degrees, PhD candidates, anybody who's been to university here in China and wants to enter America simply can't because they're military trained. And that's why people have this misconception of saying that everyone is a Chinese spy. Of course they're not. They're just ordinary kids who for 2 weeks of their first year in university dressed up and played soldiers, toy soldiers. That's all they are.
No, absolutely. I mean, well, not only that, Jerry, but one of the other things that's really sad is that I saw another comment that was, very interesting. It said, how did America turn from a nation of immigrants to a nation that hates immigrants? And
that's a good comment. Yeah.
And I said that's a really good comment because the simple thing is over the years, America has opened its borders. I mean, opened its doors to people of all walks of life, and that, in my opinion, is the most beautiful thing about the United States is that we have a very diverse country. All colors, all races, all languages. That's part of our country. You can come and become a naturalized American citizen,
Yep.
and you are American. You're American as me. Even though I'm Caucasian and born in America, I don't represent what America represents. What does an American look like? It can be anybody. That's the beautiful thing about our country. But I think what's really sad right now is, and this is something that many people might not know, is that in the United States, the tuition at universities, almost 40 to 50% of that comes from international students. And the reason for that is because the tuition for international students is significantly higher. And I'm talking 8 times higher. So, for me, I went to school at Florida, in the state of Florida, my home state, because it was significantly cheaper. If I were to go out of state, it would be very, very expensive. So, and so you have these international students that are paying literally 8 times the amount of what a local student would be paying for the same education. And that's how these universities make a lot of money. So again, like you said, when you're treating Chinese people like this, that's going to deter a lot of Asian countries from wanting to come to the United States. But it's not only that, as you're well aware of, there's been many, Chinese ethnicity professors that have been targeted by the U.S. government. They have been, and we've seen this trend now for many years, but it's accelerated tremendously. And that is the fact that many of these university professors now want to leave and actually return back to China. And it's almost, you can almost, I have a membership to the SCMP, South China Morning Post, and it's literally every single week there's at least one article, world's best,
the father of AI, the father of this, and the grandfather of that, they're all coming home.
They're all coming back to China. And I think that's such a big loss for the United States. And unfortunately, we're becoming much more radicalized in the United States. We're becoming much more, racist, in the sense of, it's sad, it's like, good, we don't want you here anymore. It's like, no, we do want the godfather of AI. Yeah, we would want him in America. That's, this world-renowned mathematician that's won all these awards. Yeah, that would be better if he was at an American university. That would help our country out. And, it's sad because many of these professors, they've spent 20, 30 years. Their entire academic career has been in the United States. And then it's like, well, geez, I've been here for 30 years. My kids are born in America, but yet this is how I'm treated. And so you see almost a little bit of spite, like, you know what, screw this. If that's how I'm going to be treated. Well, then I'm going to go to Beijing, because Beijing's, I'm going to go to Shenzhen. I'm going to go wherever, whatever university is going to give me a better opportunity.
And 10 or 20 years ago, they didn't have much of a choice. You wanted to go to a great university, you went to America. That was it. Or the UK, Imperial College, Oxford, Cambridge type thing. But if you want to go to a great university now, you can do that in China. And there are many universities in China that are achieving greatness. Tsinghua and Pudong, these guys are in the top 10 universities of the world now. They're actually matching MIT and overtaking places like MIT in their technology and science labs. So there's a lot to be said for one of the reasons why they would want to come back. Apart from the fact that they're getting ostracized by their community, they're under suspicion for having links to Chinese Communist Party or Chinese military. These are, yes, they would have connections to that. I have connections to the Chinese Communist Party. I'm sure you do too. It doesn't affect what I do or how I do it. And if I was in America, I certainly wouldn't be reporting back to the Chinese Communist Party of what I was doing. My mother and father-in-law are members, and my wife's parents are both members of the party. I didn't know this. They've both been members of 60 years. They got medals and awards a couple of years ago when they had the 100-year anniversary. My mother and father-in-law were the only couple in the town to get an award as a couple. They got an award each because they had more than 50 years service. They got medals.
Amazing.
And they got a special medal because they're the only couple who've had 60 years of membership. Now, I'm not reporting to them, and they're certainly not reporting to anybody. It's just like, the party's the party. If you're voting Republican, do you report back to the Republican Party? Of course you don't. You don't even think about it until it's election time.
Right. No, I mean, you're spot on. I mean, and again, I mean, there's so much that that just people don't understand, Jerry, about China, and I think that's why I think it's really important for people to get outside of their bubble. I think it's very important for people to travel. I mean, I think what's amazing right now, right? You see tourism now is going down, tremendously to the United States, even Canada. We have a good fan of the channel, Mark Young. He's based in Toronto, I believe. He's Canadian, Chinese Canadian, longtime supporter of the channel. And Mark, I know you're watching, so thanks again for all your support. But he put in here a really good comment where he said, in Canada here, there's a lot of Canadians are boycotting American products. A lot of Canadians are now very similar, like the cross-border traffic is gone down tremendously from Canada. Canadians are not wanting to go to the United States. I lived in Canada for 5 years. Many Canadians, they invest in the U.S. stock market. And I've had several people message me and say, as soon as Trump started treating us like that, I dumped all of my American securities. I don't want to be holding these companies anymore. And so I think this goes to a much broader topic here. Again, where I just really want to harp on that is the trust. And what's very interesting, and we had somebody comment here, and they said, they asked a question. They said, how serious is Trump's request for countries to choose between the United States and China? Is he really going to make countries choose that? And I would caution Donald Trump, because I think he'll be very surprised with the answer that he gets.
He may not like it.
He's not going to like it. It's not going to like it. And
I actually had that written down here as a question for you. Trump's choice. What's going to happen? And if he does make the choice, you just answered the question. And so, it's a great comment to come in that this is what Trump doesn't want to do is to tell countries, you need to choose. And he already is telling countries this. He's also a little erratic. He's just hit Indonesia with 37% tariffs, despite Indonesia coming to him and saying, okay, we'll buy more. We are going to buy more American products, and we're going to level it up. But there was a senator or a congressman the other day saying something along the lines of, it's no good China dealing with countries like Indonesia, Vietnam, Malaysia. They don't have any money. And that has really offended the ASEAN nations who do have money.
You know what's so short-sighted on that thinking, and I had similar comments on Twitter, because I had comment on, for example, Xi Jinping going down to Malaysia, building, obviously signing a bunch of new trade deals. Like I mentioned earlier, there was 45 new trade deals signed with Vietnam as well. Yeah. And people were like, well, who cares? Like look at Malaysia and Vietnam as, as far as their ranking of GDPs in the world. They're not, I forget the exact numbers, right? But they're not, let's just say they're not top 30 GDP countries in the world. They're smaller. So it's like big deal. And their point is that he said, look at the United States, right? The United States, we have all the leverage. Every country in the world is wanting to come and make a deal with us, right? Because of Donald Trump. And I say, that's an interesting point, because it's not that every country in the world wants to make a deal with Donald Trump. Donald Trump has literally leveraged a tariff against every country in the world. So obviously you're going to get a response from other countries, right? 130 countries are knocking on Trump's door, not because they want a deal, but because they've been blindsided with a ridiculous tariff. And it's like, hey, Donald, WTF, like, well, let's have a chat about this. But this is what goes into the Trump kind of ego. He is a very big ego. Trump is a narcissist. So this is how it works in the United States now, right? Basically he can say, see, look at me. I'm the master negotiator, the art of the deal. 130 countries are knocking on my door to make a deal with me. That shows you everybody wants to work with America. And again, it's not that 130 countries are interested. It's that you've sanctioned 130, or you've tariffed 130. So you've given them no other option but, of course, to respond to you. And like you said, I mean, look at Indonesia. And it's like, we're going to buy more American products. Well, great. Here's a 37% tariff on you. And again, this is kind of the actions that we're seeing. And I mean, I have never seen such strong comments from, I got to focus on Canada, Jerry. I mean, I lived there for 5 years. My wife, my children, they're all Canadian. And I was in Toronto. I filmed a very interesting video for a Chinese company. I think you might like this story. So during the pandemic and just after, there was a massive baby formula shortage in Canada. Interesting enough, fun fact, there's not a single Canadian company or dairy farm or anything that can produce baby formula domestically in Canada. Wow. At the time, there's not a single one. So, obviously there was a huge supply chain problem, because, they couldn't get the baby formula in. Shelves were empty. Prices were skyrocketing. Mothers in big cities, we're not talking small cities, we're talking Toronto. People in Toronto, mothers in Toronto could not get baby formula, couldn't find it. Wow. Shelves were empty. So there was an opportunity. And there was a Chinese company called Feihe, and it's one of the largest baby formula producers in the world. They came into Kingston, Ontario. They built a $380 million dairy factory, and they now producing a local Canadian brand of baby formula. So it's a huge win for who? For Canadians, for right? Canada. For Canada. And so this is the first time. And so what I did is they invited me to their factory. Jerry, this is amazing. This is the largest dairy factory in all of North America. Okay. So this is Mexico, United States included. When you go to a warehouse and you see the pallet, like the big wooden pallets stacked up with product. So one big pallet, right, that's filled with baby formula. Their warehouse can hold 17,000 pallets of baby formula. That to give you an idea of how large this factory is.
I'd assume that they're actually shipping it into the rest of North America as well. That's not for the Canadian market. Are they exporting it to places like China?
No, they actually are producing for the Canadian market, but they do ship it back to China as well. But it is the number one baby formula in Canada for sure.
Right.
And they had their plans for 2025 were to export to the United States, but I don't know if they're going to be. That's certainly on hold at the moment. But again, I mean, what this is, my channel, what I focus on a lot is I'm always focusing on win-wins. How do we get a win-win solution? And I mean, that's why I was so inspired. I had the team at this dairy factory. They said, look, we want to fly you to Toronto. We want you to come and make a video about our factory. And I said, I'm actually really passionate about this. Why? Because I have 3 young children myself. I lived in Canada for 5 years. I mean, this is an amazing story that I think more people need to hear. And, Jerry, I had dozens of people that live in Kingston, and they said, Cyrus, we never even knew this factory was in our town. And we never knew that, Yeah, and they said like, this is amazing. Like, I can't believe that you brought this story up and you shared it on YouTube. And for me, it was just it was almost like a passion project. I was like, man, this would be so cool to tell, because I want people to understand. And we had so many comments from Canadians like, this is awesome. Like, good on China. Like, we needed this. Like, this is amazing. Like, Canadian mothers can finally buy Canadian formula built, manufactured, and all of the dairy that's used in that, it's all from the 75
Canadian cows,
all Canadian cows, all from Ontario. So it's a really interesting story, and I think that's where, again, you look at these opportunities in the world, and again, when we go back to this, okay, you might think that Malaysia and Thailand, they're not big economies, big deal, they're not big GDPs. Well, when you start adding up all of the countries around the world, again, 140 countries in the world count China as their top trading partner. Essentially, the entire continent of Africa has shifted from the United States to China. Well, there's 54 countries right there. I mean, we know
53. There's 53 of them have China as their top trading partner, and one who chooses to recognize Taiwan, and that's Eswatini, which used to be called Swaziland.
There you go. So I mean, it's very. I mean, that's why when people, and it's always funny, Jerry, because I know you get this as well. When people don't like what you're saying, they just say, "Well, how much does the Chinese Communist Party pay you to say stuff like that?" And I'm like, what, to report the facts and the truth? That's
prove me wrong.
Yeah, like, please tell me where I'm wrong. Again, like, if any of my comments today in this live stream is wrong, I'll be happy to retract my statement. Just provide me the facts. But this is where, this is what I do, is I make videos using all of these data points that I can find. And if you actually take time to look at them, which not many people do, hence why I make YouTube videos about them, the data is quite, very, very clear. And I honestly think, Jerry, I think if Trump forces countries to choose, why are you going to turn away from your number one trading partner? Because what Donald Trump has proven is that loyalty to the United States will not give you anything. Look at Europe. Look at Canada. Canada is the most loyal country to the United States, and they have been treated terribly, from Donald Trump. And I think that's a really sad thing.
I would disagree with you there, and I think Australia might have the cap as being the most loyal country to the United States, and they have also been tariffed as well.
Yes,
they've followed, like Canada, I guess, but they've followed America into every single war that America has asked them to come into.
Yes.
Even Vietnam, which Britain didn't. I was living in Britain when Vietnam was going on, and we weren't involved in that. Harold Wilson, our Prime Minister, said, no way, we're not going to do this. Yeah. And Australia did. And they have been tariffed too. And here's the interesting thing. Australia actually has a trade deficit with America. America has a surplus with Australia. There's an interesting country, Australia, because it's the only developed country that has a trading surplus with China as well. Everybody else has a deficit, but they have such a small population, and that's a big thing for them. But they're now showing that you can't be, and John Mearsheimer said this, I think Henry Kissinger said this, you can't be the USA's friend. It's dangerous.
Yes.
I wanted to mention this one because I had a bit of a chat with a couple of people yesterday about this. J.D. Vance calling Chinese people peasants. I put this up not just because it was a £10. Thank you, Fluffing Fluff. But I put that up because it's a very valid point. A lot of people don't realize that this wasn't the insult that J.D. Vance thought it was, I don't think.
Yeah, actually. Yeah, I have a really good take on that, because I had a tweet that I sent out that went viral. And interesting enough, this was actually picked up by some huge media in the United States. Some of these independent media outlets that have 15, 20 million subscribers, was sharing this tweet, and I thought it was pretty cool, because I'm going to just I need to find this. It was a couple of days ago, but I do have a very, very, very clear opinion on this, because I think it's, first of all, it's a very interesting that you would use this terminology, like peasants, that you would specifically call, people peasants. Let me find this. I do want to share something else. Let me find this tweet. Here we go. Actually, I found it. It says, Chinese peasants are enjoying the world's largest high-speed rail network. the world's most advanced EV cars. They live in one of the safest countries in the world with little crime. They have more affordable and better healthcare, cheaper groceries, and some of the most advanced and futuristic cities on the planet. But yet this guy is mad because China should have just stayed poor and been a manufacturing country for the benefit of America. I wish JD Vance would go to China so that he could learn the truth. So that was my comment about, JD Vance's peasant. And I think it's just so insulting. And I mean, you look at JD Vance, I mean, him and Trump, they have not taken one trip abroad since they have become the president and vice president.
It's America first.
It's America first, right? And I think that the issue is it's just amazing. What is it? Excuse me. So many people. I'm getting just really frustrated with this narrative, from the United States, Jerry. I think that is what people, they want to look down on Chinese people, and I think what I was really shocked with was JD Vance's comments on globalization. I don't know if you saw those comments, but I thought it was a very, very interesting comment to make, because he essentially said, globalization failed because because richer countries were supposed to get richer, and the poor countries were supposed to stay poor and basically just manufacture. And that's the main issue. That's a very toxic mentality in my mind, because what he's mad about is the fact that China, not only were they good at manufacturing, but then they switched from being a manufacturing powerhouse into an innovation powerhouse. China started designing, and no better example than the EV industry, right? China is not making EVs. They're not manufacturing EVs. They're inventing EVs. They're inventing the future of EVs.
Yep.
And so now, I mean, if you're looking at who is going to be the next dominant leader in EVs, it's China. There's no other question. The United States,
not the next. It is the current. It's too late to be next.
They're China's the answer. Like that. Like EVs is China. And so that's where, again, if I go to these win-win. I mean, if I'm Donald Trump, I mean, and okay, you've tariffed all of these EVs. Why? Why is BYD not allowed in the United States? One simple reason: it would outsell every single American brand, because American consumers could care less if it's made in China. They want to have the best quality car for the best price point, and that is something that BYD would absolutely develop. And so, what I would say is, I would absolutely say, we should do a joint venture. Get BYD to build a factory in Detroit, make it a 51-49% venture, charge more money, whatever you need to do, but you're going to need to have BYD bring the technology, because it's very clear that Ford and the other, they don't have it. So if we don't have it, partner with the people that do, but make them build it in America, and then make it a win-win. I mean, if I was president, that's exactly what I would be doing.
Just as you said, win-win. Throwbrett put win-win. It's exactly right. Good timing.
Love it.
Into the comments there. Just as you said, win-win, the words win-win came up. I'm reading subtitles here, and that really is the fact. Ford just announced a couple of days ago that they're going to stop exporting cars to China. Now, interestingly, Ford build cars in China. So do GM, so do Lincoln. These are some beautiful cars, and they are exported from China into the US as well. But Fords are not selling as they used to. The only things that were being imported from the US were the F-150s. Is that what it's called? The big pickup truck?
That's the pickup truck.
And you very rarely see them on the road. There are a few, but you very rarely see them. They're 100% imported. Well, of course, now they're imported with 125% tariff on them. And I'm not sure whether they had because of their price. I don't know what their price market is, but they may be in the luxury vehicle as well. So they would have had. So someone's at F-150, F-250, and F-350, etc. Personally, I've seen a couple, very, very rare. And I did see a Humvee over here once.
Okay, interesting.
So there's a couple of things like that slipping into the country. We've just run into the hour. We've got nearly 2,200, nearly 2,300 viewers. This is fantastic. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just run over the hour. So I wanted to finish off this with your take on the Canton Fair. Have you paid any attention to it? I'm in Guangdong. I'm 80 kilometers away from the Canton Fair and haven't actually been there, but I get to talk about it every year. What's your take on the Canton Fair this year?
Yeah, I mean, what I think is amazing here, Jerry, is that the Canton Fair, I mean, I know there's a lot of YouTubers that are down there covering it.
Yeah,
I know a lot of people are. I think it's great.
yeah.
And I think what's awesome about the Canton Fair is that people might not realize this. This has been going on for, I'm going to say, at least 70 years. I mean, it's been something like
It's not quite.
amazing.
I think 54
Is it,
might have been the first.
is
Yeah,
it
it could be
54?
70 years. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is 70 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, this has been going on for seven decades. And I
Mm.
mean, I mean, my wife and her family are from Guangzhou. So I mean, this is I mean, this is well known fact, right? I mean, this has always been the hub of the world's biggest fair, all of the products that you want. I mean, and so I think what we're going to see here, Jerry, is I am very bullish on China in the future because I know I've people that have lived in China. We know the mentality of Chinese people. We know the hard work ethic. We know the manufacturing, prowess and their ability to make things. Let's just be honest. It's not
Mm.
going to happen. There's no way that this will actually work out for Donald Trump the way that it does, that he wants it to. You're not going to be able to reshore any factories to a significant margin that it's really going to make a difference. Are you going to build some new factories in America as a result of this? Sure, absolutely, but not enough to really make a
Mm.
noticeable difference. I think when you go to the Canton Fair, you see these exhibitions. A good friend of mine, another YouTuber, Alex from Reporterify Media,
I know
he's
Alex.
covered. Alex, a good friend of ours. He's covered that. He just put out a few videos of him and a couple other YouTubers there. And, I mean, it's incredible. Alex has done actually an amazing job. He has several videos. I mean, many, many videos about the Canton Fair.
Yeah.
And he does a great job because it's mind blowing how big it is and how basically any product you want is going to be there. And so I just think, again, I want people to, I saw a very funny, TikTok from a Chinese guy, and he said
Mm.
it was so good. He goes, "This is what I have in my house that's made in America. Now go to your house and see what's made in China."
It's
And
true.
that was the
It's
end of the
true.
reel. That was the whole video. And I thought it
Mm.
was like, wow, that's so simple and so brilliant because Chinese people don't need to have anything made in America in their product. And I
Mm.
mean, Jerry, I mean, think about it this way. Imagine if let's just imagine you were back in Australia, I'm here in the United States, and then our friend is in China. And let's just say
Mm.
all three of us say, you know what? I want to build the number one toaster in the world. We're going to build a new brand. We're going to manufacture the best toasters we can, but I'm going to make mine in America. You're going to make yours in Australia, and we're going to make the other guy's going to make his in China. How can you and I compete with this guy in China? Okay, how
Mm.
can we compete with just the design, the engineering, the ability to, actually manufacture that? Now, can we make a toaster in America? Sure, I'm sure we can make a great toaster here. It's going to cost
Yeah.
you a lot of money. It's going to cost you a ton of money, and so it's just the price point. You just can't beat it. And as far as the quality that you're going to be able to receive, and I think that's what's amazing is like when I've watched these Canton Fair videos, I mean, just the amazing price points, the amazing quality that you get. The
Mm.
closest thing that I've come to that would be CES, which is the Consumer Electronics Show. That's held
Yeah.
every year in Las
Yeah.
Vegas, and I go to that every January. It's always the first week of the year. CES is a great thing because again, what was really fascinating here is I make a video at CES every year for my YouTube channel. But what's incredible, Jerry, is that even from last year to this year, we saw an increase in the amount of Chinese exhibitors. So we didn't
Right.
see a decrease despite the U.S. and China tensions. And the simple thing is you go there and you look at all of these electronics, it all comes from China. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So
Here's an
yeah.
interesting thing, and I don't think anyone's ever covered this point. I wonder how many non-Chinese exhibitors are in the Canton Fair. There's over 30,000 exhibitors, and it's 137th fair. So they have two fairs a year, one at the beginning of the year, one at the end of the year. So this is number
That's right.
137. So you're right, it's about 70 years. I don't know I know it's the Canton Fair and it's designed to showcase Chinese products, but I would have thought that there would be some international component there. And I'm going to ask some people who go there. Lee Barrett was there the other day, but
Okay.
I know he did a report. He was trying to get to talk to some Americans, and there are not that many of them there. And the ones that he did talk, the one that he did talk to was a Trump supporter who didn't want to discuss tariffs. So he didn't get to find out. And that's one of the things that I'm really intrigued about. Americans are still going there. I know this for a fact. I'm seeing them on TikTok and those kinds of things. And what they're doing is they're asking, I've got friends who work at the Canton Fair, they're being asked, can you ship this via a third country, or can you make this in a different country? Right. How do we get around the 245% tariffs? And pretty much everyone is just saying, we're not going to cancel this order. We're just going to put everything on hold. Orders aren't being canceled. They're being delayed until Trump changes his mind again.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately the thing that's so difficult. So I have within the United States right now, I have a friend of mine that my neighbor, he works for Allegiant Airlines. So this is a local airline, and he said, Cyrus, it's very difficult for us right now because basically every corporation is not going to do forecasting. Like we have no idea what's going to happen.
How could you forecast?
Yeah. How could you forecast? Because, it could be 245 today. Trump could change his mind. And then, okay, we're going to do a 90-day pause. Okay. But then in the 90-day pause, we're going to bring it back for 20 days. I mean, anything can happen with this guy. And I think that's the thing that is just so hard, because as business, you need to have the consistency, right? You have to have consistency. And Trump has unfortunately created a lot of chaos and a lot of stress. And, the Trump loyalists, they are, seemingly finding a way to find an excuse for everything, just trust the process. Trump knows what he's doing. Just trust the process. This is all going to work out. But again, if you're one of those small business owners and you're getting squeezed and you're facing bankruptcy, you're not trusting the process, because again, this entire thing was brought onto you by one man, by Donald Trump. And I think that unfortunately is a very sad thing. And I just think, honestly, there's going to have to come a pivot here very quickly within the next month, from Donald Trump. There's just no other way. But the way, because of his ego and because he's a narcissist, he's going to have to find a way. And I would imagine his cabinet and some of his advisors are thinking, how do we get Trump to stop this, but actually still make him think that he won? Because that's right.
He needs to think that, I think.
He needs to think that, right? And it could be something that China's going to do this or do that. But you're right. I like what you put up here, is that people are not canceling orders. They're just postponing them, or they're going to find a way to do it through a third country. So maybe, for example, they're going to start importing into Canada or into Mexico. And then hopefully, because, maybe there'll be less tariffs there. If it's 245 and then it's only 25%, well, geez, set up a Canadian company and start importing in from Canada.
Yeah.
People will find a way. There's that's just what's going to happen. So again, it just doesn't make sense. And this is this may be part of my closing comments, is I actually went on Twitter and I said, somebody find me one positive thing that has happened from this tariff war. Like, where has the win been, right? Like you said, he's saying $2 billion a day in revenues. No, it's not. It's 500 million. But the chaos that has been created is way greater than 500 million. So it's a net loss for America. So that's not a benefit. Look at my new tariff revenue. No, that's not a revenue, because you're actually you're losing. Yeah, it's a cost. It's absolutely a cost.
We're getting towards 11 p.m. your time. I know that, and I'm very conscious of that. So I have one final parting question for you, and I'm going to ask you to just take out your crystal ball, have a look. Where do you think it's going to go? What's happening next month?
Well, I think that you're going to see a pivot. I think that you're going to see Trump move away from these China tariffs within the next month. You're going to see a reduction from the 245, and I think because of the simple reason that you're going to have tens of thousands, if not even hundreds of thousands of local businesses are really going to get affected. I think Trump's approval rating across even Republicans now is starting to dip down very low. You're starting to see a lot of Trump voters really start to question, like, well, what did I really get myself into here by voting for Trump? I saw some comments like, look, I supported Trump in the tariff war when it was 10%, 20%. Like, okay, like I get what,
you can do that.
Yeah, you can do that. But when it gets to 245% on a country that we rely on so much, that's just stupid. And again, you're not able to find a single economist that's going to agree with you that this plan would actually work. And so I think, again, you're going to see Trump. he's already blinked many times, right? Another thing that I wanted to share in this stream that people, I had somebody comment in here that said, "Oh, Xi Jinping is gonna be crying on the phone to Donald Trump to drop this 245," and I replied in the comment, it's like, no, did you see Trump already? He's already said China needs to call me. That way that we can calm this down. Like China needs to call me. Has China called me yet? Has China? I tweeted this out. It actually was well received. I said, Donald Trump is acting like the psychotic ex-girlfriend who the boyfriend dumps her, and it's like, well, you need to call me. Like you should call me back. You should call me back. And it's like, no, I'm not calling you back. Like you're psycho. And unfortunately, that's where Donald Trump is right now. Is that he, now he's like, well, this is all China. So China, do you want to call me? Do you want to call me? Do you want to have a deal with me? You want to have a deal? So it's almost like he's, but again, like, you're being desperate. And,
yes.
And I got to bring this up. This is really funny. This is a photo that I saw, and it's great because it's Donald Trump and The Art of the Deal. This is from The Art of the Deal, Jerry. The worst thing you can possibly do in a deal is seem desperate to make it. Donald Trump, The Art of the Deal.
I saw that.
Right. And so, I mean, it's actually comical, but yet it's not comical when you look at really the millions of Americans.
The consequences may not be comical at all.
It's not. It's not, and it's extremely sad. And I just think that, and again, I think my final point here is we often hear this debate that, democracy is the best form of government. China should be changing to a liberal democracy. China, I mean, look at what you get with Donald Trump. Why on earth would this be something to model your country after? Because the one thing that you can see about in China is the organization and the structure that the Chinese government has. And again, this is not me being a fanboy. I make observations about China's government. I'm just don't misconstrue what I'm saying here. I'm not saying that, communism is the way to go. Although we know that China's government's not really communist. It's more socialist with, it's more of a socialist
Chinese
government.
Characteristics.
Yeah, exactly, with the Chinese characteristics. So I think what you really what you're going to see with this crystal ball, you're going to see Trump pivot away from this. He's already blinked multiple times. He's going to eventually drop this as soon as his advisors can find a way for him to somewhat have a win. And, you're going to see that pivot. And I think what I think kind of for the rest of, as long as Donald Trump is president, I think the United States trust with the world is definitely gone. And I think that you're going to look at many countries like Canada, the European Union. They're looking already forward to 2028 when Donald Trump can be gone. And it's like, it's almost like, what, we're going to unfortunately have to put the United States on the back burner because they have an absolutely terrible leader. And again, like, find me one Western country that actually agrees with what Donald Trump's doing. Show me one country in the world that has actually gotten stronger in their relationship with the United States since Trump has assumed office.
Yeah, I would have thought Australia might have been that one country, but even they're going to election next week, 3rd of May. So that's going to be interesting, because if Trump or they do a deal, then whoever does that deal might do very well out of it. Thank you, Fluffing Fluff, again. And I just wanted to put one comment, but it's gone so far up the line now. It was Roger Starkey said, what happens if Trump is removed? We get J.D. Vance, and will that be worse? I guess that's a question for another day, unless you have a yes/no answer to that.
Who's worse as far as that? What would happen to Trump? I mean, I can't even speculate on that, to be honest. I think, yeah, let's not. I mean, I would. I mean, it'd be great for Donald Trump to be removed. I mean, he's very toxic for the United States. He doesn't have the best interest of the United States. He says he does, but he doesn't understand what he's doing. And unfortunately, I just think he's lost a little bit. I think he's too old. I don't think he's there, and he just doesn't have a solid plan in place for the United States of America. That's definitely the way that I feel it.
Okay, let's on that unhappy note, leave it there and say thank you to the nearly 2,500 people who came in to watch us, and especially to the 10 people who've put the the super chats in there. Thank you very much. And I hope we answered a few questions there. I think we did. But any final parting words before we say goodbye?
Well, Jerry, I want to just say thank you so much for everything that you do. I know I always love your work and your tweets.
Thank you.
And, I just, never had a chance to meet you in person yet, but I will be coming to, Guangdong area, for almost 2 months this summer. So
yeah. I will see you during that time for sure.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing you this summer. Maybe we can do maybe do a walk and talk together and, continue sharing our China insights. And again, I want to just say thank you to everybody. I apologize for those of you that were waiting at the beginning. I was a bit late today, but we made up for it. And I'm amazed by the turnout. Well over 2,000 people tonight on a little impromptu live stream. That's amazing. Thank you all for being here. And, send us some emails and questions, and we'll keep making videos and doing our best to help keep the world informed.
Yep.
So thank you all.
I love the questions and comments, and I'll say the same thing. Thank you to you. The feeling is mutual. I do appreciate what you do for China too. And thank you everybody else. And please do make the comments, because I read them all. I think you do as well, but you've probably got a lot more than me. But yeah, I read them all. I reply to a lot of them, and they inspire me to be better. So thank you everybody for that.
Absolutely. Awesome.